Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the last class, we started with erythroblastosis fetalis. It is a hemolytic disease of newborn. Here, the problem occurs due to mixing of RH, and this situation happens during the
Yeah.
pregnancy, second pregnancy.
Yes, sorry, Iram, to interrupt you. One thing. So use the word hemolytic. So by now, I assume that you understand these terms, right? The word hemo is related to blood, and the word lysis means
Uh,
lytic or lysis. Remember cytolysis, hydrolytic enzymes,
mi Mixing or
glycolysis. Lysis means breakdown. Glycolysis, breakdown of glucose. Cytolysis, breakdown of the cell. Okay.
yeah.
So hemolysis or hemolytic disease means where the breakdown or degradation or damage or destruction of blood cells happen. Correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. Continue. Yeah. Great.
Yeah. In this scenario, the father is RH positive and the mother is RH negative. During
Yeah.
the first pregnancy, the fetus is RH positive. So during the delivery, when the baby comes out of the body, the placenta will rupture, and few blood cells of that fetus gets mixed in the mother's body. So now
Yeah.
the mother's body will make anti-RH antibody, and within few days it will kill that antigen. But the problem here arises that RH antibodies stay in the mother's body for a long period of time. So
Yeah.
again, when the mother gets pregnant for the second time, if the fetus is Rh positive, these antibodies will cross the placenta and reach the fetus. So when Rh antibody reach the Rh positive fetus, they will cause destruction of RBC in the fetus, and it leads to jaundice and anemia, causing the child's death. This condition is called as erythroblastosis.
Yeah. It can also lead to the death of the fetus if it is very severe. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it always the onset and the reason starts with the first pregnancy, but it affects the second pregnancy. Okay.
Yeah.
With the same Rh positive baby in a Rh negative mother. Yes. Next.
Yeah, and also, so to prevent this, right after the first delivery, the mother is given anti-RH antibodies right before the mother's body produces its own RH
Yeah,
antibodies.
before
So
it produces. So we don't want the time for the mother's body to start producing. So we just want to clean it, wipe before the mother's body gets activated. Yeah.
okay, yeah, so those anti-RH antibodies given will go and kill the RH positive cells. So we are not letting the mother's body get activated, and because of this, the second pregnancy will be successful.
Correct. Then we went on to study blood coagulation.
Yes. So next is coagulation of blood. When there is an injury, platelets or thrombocyte plays a major role. They have a tissue factor. So first the 7 and 9, these are tissue factor that get activated and also goes and activate 10, which becomes 10A. Now the 10A factor will convert prothrombin into thrombin. Prothrombin
Yes.
into thrombin, yeah. And thrombin makes fibrinogen and again converts into fibrin. Now
It
this
doesn't
fibrin,
make fibrinogen. Fibrinogen is there. So
Mhm.
thrombin again activates. So fibrinogen into fibrin. Thrombin is required for that,
Okay.
for this activity. Yep.
So now this fibrin stabilize and make cross-linked mesh network known as fibrin clot.
Yes, correct. And that
Uh,
is how your blood clotting begins at every injury site or wherever the blood is leaking out of
yes.
blood vessels. Yes.
Next, we discussed the human circulatory system, a cardiovascular system. So blood in humans only flow within the heart and the blood vessels. This kind of a system is called closed circulatory system. Then we studied the cross section of the heart. The function of the heart is to pump blood. So
Yeah.
human heart has 4 chambers. The above 2 chambers are referred as atrium or auricles, and the two lower chambers are called as ventricles. So in the figure, you can see the right atrium. You can see right atrium and left atrium, and below that, it's right ventricle and left ventricle. So the walls of the atriums are very thin, whereas the ventricles, they have thick walls. This is because ventricles have to generate more pressure, like they pump more blood. Yeah, they pump more blood. So atrium always receives blood, and ventricle distributes the blood.
Not only that they pump more blood, they also pump it with higher pressure because they have to make the blood go all through. So the reason is, even between ventricles, if you will see, the left ventricle is more thicker than the right ventricle, and that's where the left ventricle also have this slightly tilt bulge. So you will see that the heart is present in the center of the chest, but it's slightly tilted towards the left. So due to which our left lung is always smaller than the right lung to accommodate for that heart, which is bulging towards the left. So even between ventricles, if they ask you which has the thickest wall, it's the left ventricle, and which produces the highest pressure, it's the left ventricle. Okay, because left
Yes.
ventricle has to pump blood from the heart to every tissue of the body, right? To your feet also. So your feet is very far away from the heart, correct?
Yes.
But right ventricle has to pump blood into the lungs. Now where is lungs? Is it very far away from the heart?
No.
No, it's just the neighbors, right? So you can understand why left ventricle have to be the strongest with the thickest wall and have to generate the maximum pressure.
So is it
Yeah.
like the heart
Yeah.
is present inside the rib cage?
Yes. So the heart is present. Um, it is present inside the rib cage, but the point is, so the central rib is sternum. So there is something like this, and then there are ribs coming out of it. Correct? You understand what I'm saying? Like this.
Yes, yes.
So there are 11. So this is called the sternum. It's present beneath this one, and the sternum ends at a place where the last floating ribs go like this. So there is this empty space here, right? Just above it is your heart, slightly tilted towards the left. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Um, yeah, then the
Make
right
sense?
atrium, yes,
Yeah.
sir. Right atrium receives deoxygenated blood from tissues via veins, and left atrium receives oxygenated blood from the lungs. So right ventricle send blood to the lungs, and from the lungs it comes to left ventricle and to all the tissue. So vena cava is the major vein that brings blood to right atrium. Vena cava has two bifurcations. The top one is superior vena cava, and the lower one is inferior vena.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Your voice
inferior.
is breaking. I'm not sure if it is my network or yours. Okay, I think my internet connection was unstable as it's showing me. So I will keep my is it better? Can you all hear my voice now? Better?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So Iram, would you like to repeat the last line of yours? I just missed something there, I think. It was my network problem, so I'm so sorry for that.
Yes, sir. So I said that vena cava is the major vein that brings blood to right atrium, and vena cava
Yes,
has
correct.
two bifurcations. The top is the superior vena cava, and the lower one is the inferior vena cava. So the blood
Correct.
which is below the heart is received by inferior vena cava, and the blood from the upper part of the body comes from the superior vena cava. Right?
Correct.
And also vena cava is the largest vein, and aorta is the largest artery. Now, pulmonary arteries, they take blood from the heart into the lungs, and it is only artery in the body which carry deoxygenated blood. And pulmonary vein are the only veins in the body which carry oxygenated blood. Through pulmonary vein, the blood comes into the right atrium, and from here it is distributed to all the tissues. To the tissues. Yeah. Am I
Correct.
audible?
Yeah, correct. Yes, you're audible.
Yeah.
Am I audible?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Then we have
Okay.
a
Yes,
say node.
great. Yeah, SA node.
Yeah, then we have SA node, which is sinoatrial node. It is a tissue. They produce slight current and also called as pacemakers. So SA node produce current and it sends to AV node. AV node send this information to all the parts of the heart, and also in
Yes. What is more important here, Iram, is that instead of saying slight current, yeah, because it will be slight, we don't need much of current. But am I audible?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Am I audible, everyone?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yeah. So I was saying that one thing that you have to remember is that these nodes, both SA node and AV node, especially SA node, the more important feature is that they make pulsating currents. Instead of saying slight current, you should use the word pulsating because they do it in a rhythmic fashion. After every 0.8 seconds, there is a pulse that makes the heart contract. Then again, after the next 0.8 seconds, there is a pulse. So this way, in 60 seconds, which is 1 minute, the heart beats around 72 times. Is that clear?
Yes.
Yes. So use the word pulsating current.
Pulsating. So they produce
Yeah.
pulsating current, and it's also called as the pacemakers. So SA node produce this current and sends to AV node, and AV node send this information to all the part of the heart and also in between the septum. And the yellow color you can see in the figure, it is called as
Yeah.
the bundle of His.
Yes. Bundle of His is what is bundle of His? These are like kind of wirings, the neurons that give signal to every muscle, every corner of the heart that whenever there is this pulsating current coming, you have to contract. So they just transfer it. Correct?
Yes, and
Spread
between
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And between right atrium and right ventricle, there is a valve known as tricuspid valve. And between left atrium and left ventricle, there is bicuspid valve, also known as mitral valve. The valves are present to prevent the backflow of the blood, and these valves are fixed and steady in a particular place by chordae tendineae. Chordae tendineae.
Yes. Chordae tendineae are the muscles that keep it together and do not allow these valves to get damaged or by pressure prevent it from getting dislodged as well. Now these valves are very important, just like valves are important anywhere where they are present to prevent the backflow. So once the blood is in the ventricles, so when it comes from atrium to ventricles, these valves open and the blood comes down. But when the ventricles contract, these shut. So these chordae tendineae also have one more major function which was asked in entrance. So apart from keeping the valve in its right place, chordae tendineae do not allow it to open in the reverse direction. Because remember I told you tricuspid means three flaps and bicuspid means two flaps. Correct?
So your voice is breaking.
Is it still breaking? One second. Is it better now, people?
Yes, it's okay now.
Yeah. So I was saying that three flaps, bicuspid means two flaps. Correct? Am I audible, people? Okay, am I audible now, people? I've switched networks. I hope this works.
Yes, sir.
Doesn't seem like working. Oh, wait. Is it lagging? I think it is lagging. Just checking, is this better? Am I audible? Devangi, Iram, Aisha.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, great. So this okay, great. So this one is working. So I'll stick to this network and let me share the screen again. Can you all see the screen? Yes. Can you all see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very good. I think this is working. Yeah, so I was saying that remember I told you that tricuspid valve means 3 flaps and bicuspid valve means 2 flaps, right? Bi and tri. So if they are just flaps, they can just hinge in any direction. I gave you the example of a older, you know, police station doors that used to just hinge and swing in both directions, correct? But here you just want it to swing or open in one direction. So what will prevent these flaps, which are again, you know, they are muscular, they are tissues, they are muscular in origin. So what prevents them from going in the opposite direction? That is chordae tendineae. So chordae tendineae holds it. When it tries to go back, it shuts down and it cannot go beyond that. It's like you have ropes which is tied to doors. So the door can only either open in one direction or can get shut, but it cannot go into the other direction because it will be pulled by the rope. Is it clear? Is that clear? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, very well. So apart from just keeping it in place, they also prevent the flaps to open in a reverse direction, chordae tendineae. Now I will take from here. Thank you so much, Iram, for this recap. It was very elaborative. Now, if we talk about the wall of the heart, so you see here, so this is a heart, this one, and this is a cross section of a wall. So the outermost layer, this one, is fibrous in nature and is called fibrous pericardium. So this is the outermost. I'm marking it as 1. Beneath that is a parietal pericardium. So pericardium, in your book, it's just 3: pericardium, myocardium, and endocardium. Okay, so here you have pericardium, and there is a visceral pericardium as well, which is known as epicardium. So this is a direct layer of the heart. This one, the fibrous pericardium and the parietal pericardium, all these 3 are together known as pericardium. So the word peri comes from periphery. They make the outermost layer. Now, in pericardium, there is this pericardial cavity. You know what? Why is this cavity there? It has fluid in it. It is a fluid-filled cavity. It kind of gives a cushion to the heart. Okay? Do you understand? So this fluid-filled cavity all around the heart, very, very thin cavity, kind of gives a cushion to the heart. Okay? Then the real layers of the heart start, which again is the visceral pericardium or epicardium. Then the muscular, the most important and the thickest layer is myocardium. It is the thickest, and it is made up of muscles. And as I told you already, the word myo means, what does the word myo means? Devangi, do you remember the word myo? It means muscles. And the word cardium or cardiac is associated with heart. So myocardium means the heart muscle. So these are the muscles which, and this is the thickest layer, which is the middle layer, which allows the heart to contract and relax. Then inside is the endocardium, and this endocardium is in contact with the blood which is inside the heart. Okay, so these are the layers. Is that clear? It is a cross section. So this is the outermost and this is the innermost. Okay, is that clear, everyone? Shall I move forward?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So now I'll be talking about something which is in a book and is known as the cardiac cycle, and before that, the double circulation. So what is double circulation? Why we call it double circulation is because the same blood, if I tag a blood cell, if I mark a blood cell, let's say out of millions and millions of blood, there is one RBC that I have somehow marked. I put a tag on it. Now in one cycle, in one cardiac cycle, how many times that RBC do you think will pass through the heart in one cycle? Can you tell me logically? The same blood, how many times it will pass through the heart in one cycle? Once, twice, thrice, or none of the above? Iram?
Is it like a specific RBC or a blood or the entire blood?
Yeah, let's say a specific RBC. Or let's say 10 RBCs as a bunch which are flowing in the blood. So I marked these. So in one cycle, how many times do you think it will pass through the heart?
One time?
No, it will be twice, 2 times. See how? So let's say that RBC begins its journey here in the body part. Okay, let's look at the schematic. It is from NCERT only. But let's say the RBC, let me make it red. It starts its journey from here. Okay. So it will go from the body part through the vena cava, which are the bigger veins written here. And veins have a thicker lumen. Can you see veins have thicker lumen, and veins also have valves. Arteries have a thinner lumen because they have a thicker wall. They have a thin wall because the pressure is low. Here the pressure is high. So in artery, no valves but a high pressure. This you already know. Now let's say this RBC starts the journey here. It will go all the way. First, it will enter into the heart through right atrium, right? So this is the one time it will interact with the heart. Then from the right atrium, it will go into the right ventricle. Then from right ventricle, it will go into the lungs. Do you understand? Trace this red thing. It will go into the lungs. In the lungs, that RBC will get oxygenated. Again, through the pulmonary vein, it will come and enter the heart, right? The left atrium. Go to the left ventricle, and then from the left ventricle, it will go out and will finally reach at the same place from where it started the cycle, correct? So in one cycle, how many times it enters the heart?
2 times.
2 times. So that's why it's called a double circulation. It simply means that heart circulates the same blood twice, one through the lungs to get it oxygenated, and then when it gets oxygenated, then the same blood through the body, every part of the body. And when I am saying that blood goes to the lungs for oxygenation, it is very specific part of the lung which are called alveoli. So blood in capillaries goes to alveoli, but rest all other parts of the lung itself need nutrition to survive, correct? It's not like lungs do not need nutrition to survive. Even heart itself needs nutrition to survive, yes or no? Heart is a pumping organ, but it needs its own blood's nutrition to survive, correct? So does the lungs. So inside the lungs, there are it's not just that pulmonary artery enters the lungs and pulmonary vein exit the lungs. The normal arteries coming from aorta also enters into the lung. And the veins, which are superior vena cava, also collect from the lungs, because these lungs are also getting nutrition. Do you understand? Is that clear, or any confusion is there?
So,
Yes.
is it like the same blood that's circulating?
Yes, it is the same blood that's circulating, unless and until some blood cells are dying and new are forming. But by the same blood, I mean on any given day, let's say, assuming that your blood cells are fixed, no one is dying, no one is generating new. So the same blood will go through the heart twice, right, to complete one cycle. If it starts from your hand, it will be collected by the veins, will go to the heart, from heart will go to the lungs, then come back to the heart, then will come back to your hand again, correct? It's the same blood. Otherwise, we have a fixed amount of blood in our body, no?
Yes.
Yeah. So is that clear? There's no is there
Yes,
any
clear.
you
No.
can ask if there's any. Okay, great. So what is cardiac cycle? Let's define things certain. So write down cardiac cycle. Define cardiac cycle. So write down cardiac cycle is a sequential event. Cardiac, I'm writing it here. Cardiac cycle is a sequential event sequential means a series of sequences are there from 1 to x to y to z to a. So sequential events that in a cyclic manner makes the atria and the ventricles contract and relax. That in a cyclic manner makes the atria of the heart, atria and ventricles contract and relax. And when they are contracting, we use a term called systole. Okay, and when they are relaxing, we use the word called diastole. So these are medical terminologies, biomedical terminologies. So you will not see doctors talking that the heart is contracting, relaxing. When they talk, they are like, it is the atrial systole or the ventricle diastole or ventricle systole, things like that. So if I use the word atrial systole, what does it mean? What does the word systole means? Atrial systole means that the atriums have contracted and they will contract together, right? Followed by, so first thing first, what happens first? So first, atrial systole happens. Then what happens? Atrial diastole. If it has contracted, it also has to relax when the heart will go back. But during atrial diastole, simultaneously, ventricle or ventricular systole happens. Okay, almost at the same time. And then happens ventricular diastole. Okay, is that clear? Okay, so this is third part. So this is a sequence. Now, how many of you have heard of the heartbeat? A beating heart? How many sounds do you hear from a beating heart? So let me also write it.
I think 2.
Yes, 2. Atrial contraction. Here it's ventricle relaxation. Rest you can understand, right? So there are two sounds, and we often call it lub and dub. Okay, so lub dub, lub dub, lub dub. It's not dhak dhak or dhuk 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 dhuk. It's lub dub, lub dub. So that lub dub, the sound which we hear through stethoscopes. So what is this lub sound coming from? And so there are two sounds, but there are 4 events happening. So any idea what's happening here? So the first heart sound, which is lub, okay, this is coming from the closure of the tricuspid and bicuspid valves. So write down. Lub is due to closure of valves. Which one? Heart valves. Specifically tricuspid. And where are they present? Between the atria and the ventricles. So the first sound comes when all the blood which was filling into the atria moves into the ventricles and the valves now close. So the first sound is coming somewhere at this step, right? Is it clear? So this is where the lub sound is coming. Is it clear, everyone? And then the second sound, which is dub, It is coming when the closure of semi-lunar valves happen. Now I'm using a new term here, but I'll explain it. What are semi-lunar valves? So what does the word semi-lunar means? Semi means, if any new term comes,
Half.
yes, perfect, half. And lunar means half. Luna is moon, okay? So semi-lunar valve is present in the aorta, okay? It is present at the point where aorta leaves the ventricle. Okay, it's also known as aortic valve. So write down, the semilunar valves are half moon shaped valves, and specifically it is present between, the semilunar valve is a half moon shaped valve present between aorta and the left ventricle and pulmonary artery and the right ventricle. Okay, is that clear? So aorta valve, so when blood moves out of ventricles, then a valve opens. These valves open. Semilunar valve have to open between the right ventricle and the pulmonary artery and the left ventricle and the aorta. It has to open, blood goes, and then when it again relaxes, there is a negative pressure and the valve has to close. You know, it flips back, like it thumbs back and closes like goop. So that's lub dub, lub dub. So where will you see the dub? Somewhere here, right? So these two voices are associated with this. Is it clear? One is between atrial systole and ventricular systole, and one is between ventricular systole and ventricular diastole. And these sounds can be used, or you can study these sounds. Is there a rhythm? Is there a problem with the rhythm? Is there too much of gap? All these things can be heard to just detect any heart abnormality. So systole, diastole, lub dub, valves, tricuspid, bicuspid, semilunar valve, everything is clear to you? Cardiac cycle is clear. What is double circulation? Is that clear, people?
Yes, sir. But so what is the duration between two heart sounds?
Duration between two heart sounds. You mean duration between lub and dub?
Yes.
I don't. So the duration between lub and dub, I have no clear idea about it. It has never been asked, and I don't think it's too much, because that's a good question. I'll see if there is an answer, because if there is a rhythmicity, there has to be an answer. But the duration between two cardiac cycles, or the duration between duration of one cardiac cycle is 0.8 seconds. So in 0.8 seconds, the heart pumps approximately around 70 to 80 ml of blood, and that is called the stroke volume. So the cardiac cycle can take more or less time. Sometimes when you're sleeping, your cardiac cycle is longer. So instead of 72 beats per minute, your heart can just beat 50 times or 60 times per minute, where it is just taking 1 second or 1.2 second instead of 0.8. It can also become faster if you are running. So when you run, your heartbeat goes to, let's say, around 120 beats per second, which means every 0.5 second it is beating. From 0.8 it has come down to 0.5. So whenever the heart beats faster, the stroke volume decreases, right? Because you do not give enough time for the blood to come into the heart and properly fill all the chambers and then get pushed out. So whatever blood comes, it just keep pushing it out. So the heart is pumping faster, but not necessarily it's pumping the same amount of volume per stroke. So 70 ml is around the stroke volume. It's called the volume of blood pumped in one cardiac cycle. Is that clear?
Yes, sir. But like in exercises, when you do exercises on all, it increases, right?
It increases. What increases is the beats per minute increases, but the stroke volume does not increase, right? In fact, stroke volume will go down, because if you are beating faster, you are just beating small volumes, correct? Because enough time is not there for the heart to get filled properly. Suppose it takes 0.8 seconds for the heart to get filled with 70 ml blood, and then it again pumps, again contracts. But if you're contracting in 0.5 seconds, maybe just 50 ml of blood came in that 0.5 second and you pumped it out, then another 50 pumped it out. So it's a continuous thing. Blood keeps coming, you keeps pumping it out, like heart keeps pumping it out. Is that clear?
Yes. But one more thing,
Yeah.
cardiac output will be changing, right? It would differ, right?
Yes, cardiac output is the uh, mm, the total output of the by the heart, that it has let's say the volume of blood pumped by each ventricle per minute is cardiac output. Okay, so instead of 72 beats, if you are beating now 120 times, so even if you are pumping 50 ml, not 70, still you will be throwing more blood out, right, in 1 minute. So the whole idea is to throw more blood out, because you are constantly doing vigorous exercise, you are running, doing all sorts of things. So all your tissues in the body needs more and more oxygen. So there are two ways to increase oxygen flow. One is you increase the stroke volume, okay, and the other is you increase the beats per minute. So when we are exercising, heart goes to increasing the beats per minute. So if you do simple maths, so if you are doing 72 beats per minute, so 72 into 70, how much blood went out? Do it. If you do 72 into 70 ml, it's around 5 liters, correct? Around 5000 ml. 7 sevens are 49. I'm just taking it approximately.
5040.
Yes. So 7 sevens are 49, 5000, something around 5000. Now, if you do 120 beats into 50, even if the volume decreases, but simply the fact that now there are 120 beats per minute, the heart is beating twice, almost twice. Sometimes it goes to 130. How much blood is being thrown out per minute? I think 12 fives are 60. So it's clearly 6 liters, right, per minute. Earlier it was 5 liters, now it's 6 liters. You understand?
Yeah.
So does it make it clear? The cardiac output will increase, but not necessarily the stroke volume will increase. Even if it decreases slightly, still you can pump out more blood per minute. Clear? So please read all these. So there are some certain things that you should know. It comes in entrances. These are numbers. What is the total blood volume in a body, in a human body? In males, it's higher than females. In males, it's said to be around 5 liter to 5.5 liters total blood is there in a fully grown adult male. It can again differ physiology by physiology. Some races or some males of some specific regions are shorter or smaller in size. Some males are bigger and huge in size. So but the blood volume can also differ. Also the muscle content or the lipid content, they also can differ, but we always take a average, human average parameters. In females it's slightly lower, around a liter less, so around 4.5 liters. Then each stroke volume is around 70 ml, and uh, by this you can know that if there is a 5 liter blood in someone's body and the heart is beating 72 beats per minute, and in each beat there is 70 ml blood, so in 1 minute our heart pumps the whole blood, which is the whole total amount of blood, once through the body. Make sense? You just did the calculation, it came out to be around 5 liter and 40 milliliter, like 5,040 milliliters, right?
Yes.
So in 1 minute, technically, heart is capable of uh, circulating all our blood once through the body, or through the heart itself. Clear? So these kind of questions can come in entrance. Also, there are certain volumes known as reserve volume, tidal volume, vital capacity, total lung capacity, things like that associated with the respiratory system and also with circulatory system. So please go back to your NCERT and sources and get to know about these. These are just facts, okay? So no concepts in
So,
it, but you should, yes, tell me.
so one more thing I would like to share. I read somewhere in the website that the
Mhm.
cardiac output increases 15 liter to 30 liters in athletes. Is it like true?
Yes, yeah, it is true. And even in athletes, there are two things that happens. There's something called athlete's heart condition. Sometimes, because see, heart has a limit to beat. It's not like the faster you run, heart can beat to 240 beats per minute. No, it cannot. Heart will fail, heart will die, because SA node has to maintain its rhythmicity also, right? How fast can you ask SA node to keep pulsating, keep producing pulsating currents? That has a biological limit. So, but athletes push their body to limits, to extent. So what the heart does, it adapts in a very different scenario. It, instead of beating very, very fast, even on low beatings, it increases the stroke volume a lot. So like our stroke volume is 70 milliliter per beat, a normal human's stroke volume. Athletes can beat up to 120 to 150 ml per beat. Do you understand? Because SA node has a limit. If heart beats very, very fast, if it goes beyond 120, the fat metabolism starts. If it goes beyond 140, 150, it's not very sustainable. You cannot do it for very long. And if it goes beyond 160, the heart can fail and can become arrhythmic and stop. So that's the issue. So body adapts. So it's not like you should not walk or
But
play or become an athlete. Yes.
there's only like 5 liter of blood present in the body, right? So how is it
Oh,
ejecting
yeah. Okay,
30
okay.
liter?
Okay, I'm so sorry. So that way you're saying cardiac. So see, cardiac output is the total blood that so it's the same thing. You will study in, I'll just give you one more example to make it clear. You will study in excretory system that our kidneys filter 180 liters of filtrate in a day. 180 liters filtrate. Do we have 180 liters of fluid in our body? No, right? 180 liters is just by weight is like 150 kg or 160 kg, right? So when it's always the rate. So cardiac output is a rate per unit time. So the time is 1 minute. Now in 1 minute, how much blood you are pumping out, all of it will be added. You understand? So even normal, for a normal human, so let's say you have 4 liters of blood in your body as per the standard conditions, or 4.5 liters of blood in your body as a fully grown woman. Okay, Iram, are you with me? Am I audible, or did I lose
Yes.
all of you? Yes. Okay. So suppose you have 4.5 liters of blood, and you started jogging, and your stroke volume is same. Let's say 70 because you're jogging. But your heartbeat is 80 now, not 72. It's slightly increased to 80. So can you do now 80 into 70? What is the volume? 80 beats. Each beat is throwing 70 ml blood. So in 1 minute, how much your ventricles will pump out?
5,600 ml.
5,600. But how much blood did you have in your body?
5 liters.
So how did that extra blood, where did it came from? It's the same blood, it came back to the heart and again got pumped, right? So that is how athletes can have a cardiac output of around 20 liters as well, because the blood pumps very, very fast and circulates very fast. So in a normal human, I told you that blood takes one round of the body in 1 minute. So there the blood takes one round of the body in 15-20 seconds only, and then come back, because they are throwing more volumes with every stroke, and they are also beating more because they are athletes. They are pushing their limits. Does that make sense to you, Iram, now?
Yeah,
It's the
Nasti.
same fluid. Yeah, it's the same fluid. Basically, it's the rate. So we just keep adding everything over 1 minute to tell you the cardiac output per minute. Okay. Similarly, our kidneys keep filtering the same blood. So kidneys remove a lot of water, then body takes it back. No, itna water we cannot throw, no? Kidneys are like, okay, then take it back. Then we take it back. Then again the blood comes to the kidney again takes away that water, because that is how it is designed. It's biologically, it's evolved to just take water and salt, and then it again is reabsorbed because it's useful. So it produces 180 liter of filtrate, but we only throw out as urine around 1 liter or 1.5 liter in a day, not more than that. So out of 180 liters, if you are just throwing, let's say, even 1.8 liters, that is how much? 1%, right? 99% of the thing is reabsorbed back. So that's how we calculate the rates of filtration or cardiac output, etc. Okay,
Yeah.
is that clear? So double circulation is clear.
Yes.
Yeah. Now I'm giving you a homework. Please write down a homework that you have to do today. Before that, let me tell you one more thing. There are two types of heart in animal system. Okay, let me also make this clear to you. Oh, I'm so sorry. What did I do? So types of excuse me, hearts in biology. Now, how many of so have you seen in movies or anything, or if I take out a human heart from the body and keep it on a dish outside the human body, the moment if I'll take out from the human body, cutting every connection and keep it out, will it stop beating or will it continue beating?
It will continue beating.
Right? You must have seen that, correct? Heart taken out of the body also continues to beat for some time on its own, unless but it will eventually stop and die, because when it will exhaust all the glucose and energy and nutrients in its tissues, there is no connection to bring more things, right? And also there is no blood. So even if you take all the blood out of the heart can still continue to beat for the time till it has its own reserves. Correct? So this type of heart is called a myogenic heart. Myo, the word myo again means Myo means only one thing in biology. Myocardium, here, muscle. Genic means origin, like genic means which controls. So myogenic heart is auto-controlled. It's called auto-regulated by specialized muscles. It is a auto-regulated heart by specialized muscles called nodes, SA node and AV node. Okay. Is that clear? Nodal muscles. So SA node and AV node. These two type of muscles are specialized and keep the hearts on an auto-regulated beating system. Now these muscles can be not controlled but can be modulated depending on what are you doing. Are you sleeping? So brain can just modulate it, body can just modulate these tissues but cannot do not totally control. This is the reason that human heart keeps on beating even when it is outside the body, and this is again the reason that sometimes humans who are brain dead, their heart still keeps beating, right? So people are in coma or their brain is dead but their heart is beating. You must have heard of these kind of situations, right? The patient is called brain dead but the heart is beating. Okay, does that make
Yes.
sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now the question is, how will we define biological death then? So in some countries, brain dead can be considered as death. But in countries like India, the medical rule says that if a person is brain dead, but the heart is beating, the beating of heart is a proof that the body is alive. And then like the doctors cannot take the call to take the patient out of ventilators or things like that. So that call has to be taken by the relatives. But in countries where brain dead can be considered dead even if the heart is beating. So technically if your brain is dead and it has no chance of revival, then your heart can continue to beat but still the patient is not alive, right?
So,
Biologically it's not. Yeah.
so that country let the person die. Those countries. I mean.
Yes, because the person is dead already. Because in India also, even if you keep that patient who's brain dead, there are no chances of the patient reviving back because the brain is dead. After some time, the heart will also die. You are just pumping air into the lungs due to a ventilator. So the moment you will take that ventilator off, lungs will stop breathing because lungs are in lungs and the respiratory system is in a greater control with the brain. So there is a respiratory center in the brain that keeps the lung going. So when the brain dies, the lung dies first, but the heart can still keep beating. So what will you call that person? So what we do is, in our, like in India, we put the patient on ventilator, pump air in and out forcefully in its lungs. That's called ventilation, you know. But the patient is not breathing on its own. We are making it breathe because the heart is still beating. So we are not considering his death. On other countries where the brain is dead, so just to check if the patient will survive or not, if you take it out of the ventilator, if the patient will die, then the doctor can come and tell the relatives that there is no point. The patient is brain dead, so chances of recovery are not there. So you take the call. There also it's like considered, but they take the call. So you can medically say that the patient is dead if the brain is dead because we have a myogenic heart. Okay, and this kind of heart continue to beat even outside the body for some time. But there is another type of heart in animal system which is controlled by the nervous system, especially the ANS, autonomic nervous system. So it will only function and increase the and will work if it is connected to the brain. If you sever the connection between heart and the brain, the heart will die. In our system, there is a special neural center which modulate the cardiac function, but it modulates through ANS. It can increase the heart rate, it can decrease the heart rate, but heart can continue to beat on its own at a settled pace. So that's called myogenic. Another one is called neurogenic heart, where the brain controls the heart. So in humans, it is myogenic, and the other one is neurogenic. Okay. So even myogenic heart is under the regulation of brain. It is a regulation through ANS. So you can write down, in myogenic heart also, there is a ANS. There is a ANS driven. ANS is autonomic nervous system. There is a ANS driven modulation of the heart rate or the heartbeat. But another one is a neurogenic heart, which is controlled by brain. So in this, if the organism is brain dead, the organism is dead. Heart will not beat. Okay. Does that make sense, people? Am I audible? Please keep saying something, because I'm very skeptical of the network. Yes, or you can use the emojis. That's also that also helps. So my question is, higher organisms like human have a myogenic heart. So where do you find a neurogenic heart? Where if you cut the nervous system's connection with the heart, it will stop working. Also use a word here, ganglion, because neurogenic heart is found in lower invertebrates, like your annelids, like earthworms and insects, found in lower invertebrates. Okay, like annelids and arthropods. And in them, in annelids, there is something called ganglion instead of brain. Insects do have brain. Insects have a proper brain, but sometimes annelids like earthworm do not have a proper brain. They have clusters of neurons, a bunch of neurons forming ganglions in different segments. So they have a repeating ganglion in many segments. So it is equivalent of a brain, but not that evolved, simply. Does that make sense? Is that clear, everyone?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm giving you on homework here related to this part itself. So you have to figure out, it's in NCERT also, you can take help of internet, but do verify it with me in the next class, and I'll ask that. You have to go and find out the structure of arteries and veins. By structure, I mean the layers. So the same thing that I did here for heart, right? Which layer of heart is called what? It is just a fact-based homework. Structure of arteries and veins. So what you have to figure out is different layers. What are the different layers? Okay, will you do that? You will find terms like tunica, endothelium, tunica. So that's all that you have to figure it out. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. And another work that I'm giving you, it's just related to this only, is disorders. That's the last part of NCERT. Again, factual, you just have to know it. So disorders, this we have to do for every physiological human physiology chapter. Whatever system you are studying, you have to study certain disorders of it. So disorders of circulatory system, it's the last part of every chapter in human physiology. okay, in humans. So it has to be human specific. No disease which is not in humans and other organisms, you don't have to do that. So these two, will you do it on your own?
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So one more thing.
Yes.
So in the previous class, you asked about the RBC, right? Why do they lose nucleus?
Ah,
Yeah,
yes, right.
I just gave up. Just need the answer.
You gave up? Like you figured out why do they lose nucleus, or you gave up?
No, I didn't.
You could not figure out?
No.
Okay, because most of the websites just say that losing the nucleus enables the RBCs, to contain more hemoglobin, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There is one more bigger reason that normally you will not find in superficial just Googling, and that is it's related to the metabolism. Now, let me tell you, every living cell, it has nucleus. So nucleus has genetic material. Genetic material has genes. These genes upregulate or downregulate at different time points, right? They make proteins. So under different conditions, different proteins are required. For example, let's take an example of our skin cell. So a skin cell has a nucleus. In that nucleus, there is a DNA. In that DNA, there is a gene for melanin. So when we go out in the sun, our skin cell has to produce more melanin. So it produces some more proteins, right? So it can modulate its function depending on the changes in the environment. And all these things require energy, right? To translate the DNA, transcribe the DNA, and to make the protein, to break the protein, to again make the protein, to again break the protein. Keep doing it till your lifespan is there. So cells require energy to survive, correct? Yes
Yeah.
or no?
Yeah.
Yeah. And how do cells get this energy? They make it inside themselves. How do they make energy inside themselves? By glycolysis. And what is required for glycolysis in like human cells? For glycolysis and respiratory system, electron transport chain, oxygen is required. You understand? All the cells of the body require oxygen so that they can use that oxygen to break down glucose, and they can also use that oxygen again, like for like in the electron transport chain, to reduce it to water. Okay, H2 is released as the final product because it accepts the electrons. So if you have nucleus, you will do all these things. So what happens during RBC's development is RBC itself is responsible to transport oxygen, correct? Now
Yes.
imagine if RBC itself is a metabolically active cell, when it will take oxygen from the lungs, by the time it will reach your feet, it will use some of it itself, right? And there are 5 million RBCs per cubic centimeter of blood. So if all of these RBCs are metabolically active, imagine how much of nucleus is just wasted by the transporters themselves. So it's the same thing like if I ask Devangi to transport food to Iram, but Devangi herself is hungry while she is transporting. So will the food reach Iram? No. Does it make sense, Iram? So by
Yes.
not having a nucleus, RBCs cannot form any new protein. So all they have to rely on is preformed protein. So they have nucleus when they are developing, when they are forming into the bone marrow, when these cells are forming, erythrocytes are forming from their hematopoietic stem cells. Hematopoietic again means hemato is for heme, for blood. Poiesis is generation. So hematopoietic, which generates the blood cells. So these stem cells are the precursors of RBCs. When they are making RBCs, the immature RBC has a nucleus. It also uses oxygen, utilizes oxygen, does protein synthesis, does everything, makes a lot of protein, store it in the cell, and then degrades the nucleus. it's true that when the nucleus is not there, you have more oxygen carrying capacity, more hemoglobin carrying capacity, but not because the inside area space is free, but because you are not utilizing the oxygen yourself. Does it make sense to you, Peter?
Yeah.
Okay, that's why RBC have a short lifespan. They only live for around 3 months, out of which around 1 month they spend in forming. And after 1 month or 40 days, when their nucleus is gone, then they come into circulation, and they, for the next 50-60 days, they only rely on the stored protein that they have. The moment that reserve is exhausted, they go to the spleen and they degrade, they die. That's how they have a fixed lifespan of 120 days. Okay?
Yes.
Because they are on their life support reserves. Cool. So that was the answer. But for if it comes in your boards, and if you write, because even NCERT says that even if you write that not having the nucleus allows the RBC to contain more oxygen carrying capacity or more oxygen carrying hemoglobin, so more oxygen can be transported, you are saying the same thing but not giving the exact biologically correct answer, but you will get marks. But I just wanted you to dive deeper and know the logically correct scenario as well. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So now we come to something which is known as ECG, the last part that I will cover today. You must have heard of ECG. It's called electrocardiograph. E for electro because it's done through electricity. Cardio because it's for the heart, and graph because at the end you get a graph. Pictorially you can see what's happening. So electricity, cardio, heart, graph is a graph. Now there's a machine which has some wires and it has some electrodes, which is often put to different like chests and different region around the heart, right? Any one of you who have done ECG, who have got ECG done? No one? Okay, that's good in a way that you never had to get your ECG done, which means everything is very, very good in your body. But I think once in a while you should get your ECG done just to know, because many things in heart, you do not know till there is some problem that starts arising. But if you get your ECG done and go to a cardiologist and get consulted, this I just wanted to consult that my heart is fine, they will just say okay, everything is fine, just for it. So ECG is not just random up and down. So okay, it has a lot of information. It is called PQRST graph. So diagrammatically, when we do ECG, it has reasons. So it has PQRST waves. So let's start with, so how a ECG is formed. So it starts with a small bump, then it goes for some time, and there's a small dip and goes up. Okay, then comes down, comes up, then there is a peak like this, and then it repeats. Okay, so this is P. Okay, this going down is Q, this peak is R, this going down again is S, and this is T. PQRST again, then this will be P. So the cycle continues. That's why I made this one last thing. Never thought that an ECG also can be very complicated, but ECG gives us a lot of information about heart without opening the heart or looking at the heart directly. Just by looking at this graph, we can know a lot of things. Now this P wave, let's keep noticing. Okay, keep writing here. So the P wave tells us about atrial depolarization. Atrial depolarization. When I say depolarization, It means excitation. So if the neurons or if the cells of the atria of the heart gets excited, what are they going to do the next? So what are we measuring here through ECG is the electrical potential, correct? Electricity, in a way say that we are measuring the slight, you know, that systematic electrical current that was generated by SA node. Do I make sense, everyone? Iram, Devangi?
Yeah.
Yeah. So these multiple leads which are attached to the chest region is just taking this signal, this electrical signal. Okay. So the P, this small peak that you see here, the first P tells you that your atria gets excited, which means SA node will fire or has fired. So SA node generated some current, which means atria is excited. Now it will contract. So atrial depolarization, and which leads to contraction of, so if P wave is fine, your atrial contraction is fine. Contraction of atria. Okay. So by looking at the P, you can say, okay, the P is okay, P is normal, which means your atria are working fine. Now let's go to QRS. So QRS is a complex. It's always taken together. QRS complex. This tells you, and I think you have guessed by now, what does this tells you about? This tells you about ventricular depolarization, which means your ventricles are now excited. Excitation of ventricles, which means that the current that was produced by SA node has successfully been transferred to AV node and is successfully moving through the bundle of His to every corner of the ventricle. This is what it tells. So just by looking at the QRS complex, if this QRS complex is like short, let's say it goes up but it falls very short here, or if it goes very deep down here or deep down here, or if it is too long, all these things tell us about different heart conditions, that you know the condition, your heart has a problem, your heart is working abnormal. Oh, I'm so sorry. So it tells that the heart is working abnormal. Do you understand, everyone? Yes, no? So this means it initiates contraction of ventricles. Okay, clear till here? Now we have, so in other words, I should call this region, this P wave is telling me about atrial systole. Can I say that? I just, because this language will come in your exam. Can I say this? Do you understand this? Atrial systole. Do you understand this is ventricular systole? Okay. Just
Yes.
a different language to say this. Now the T wave, okay, which is here, this thing, which is slightly smoothened like a road. From one side it's going slowly up and then falling down. So this T wave tells us about ventricular repolarization. When it is depolarization, it is excitation. But when it is repolarization,
Ventricular diastole.
yes, it is called relaxation, not excitation, it is relaxation. In other words, we call it ventricular diastole, right? Is it clear?
Yeah.
So atrial systole, ventricular systole, ventricular diastole. Where is atrial diastole? There is something wrong, yeah? We made something wrong. Where is, and let me remove this part finally. Yes, now you can see and tell me, where do you see, where did atrial diastole gone? Atrial systole is here, but atrial diastole is not there. Now let's go back to a little bit. I told you the lub sound physiologically. Now you have to connect all the dots, connect all the knowledge. Lub, when the atrial diastole happens, it happens simultaneously with the ventricular systole. Now diastole means relaxing. So atria itself is very small as compared to ventricles. So atrial systole will be less powerful than the ventricular systole. So see, this is the peak created by atrial systole. How big is it? And this is the peak created by ventricular systole. How big is that? If you compare, there is a lot of difference, right? So if the systole of atria is this much less powerful in comparison to systole of ventricles, do you think that the diastole of atria, which is happening somewhere around this region only with the ventricular systole, do you think it will be like you can actually detect it? No, right? So the atrial diastole is so less powerful that it gets masked, it gets undetected within the ventricular systole because it happens somewhere simultaneously with the ventricle. So when the ventricles contract, at that time the atria is relaxing back so that new blood can come in, correct? So if the question comes, which of the following is not represented by a ECG, it is atrial diastole. Okay. So we have one phase this, one phase this, and the one phase this. This is for ventricular systole, this is for ventricular diastole, and this is for atrial systole. Is this clear, Devangi and Niram? This was your ECG that you needed to know about. So any abnormality, deviation in the shape, or if you see that the distance between these two or these two is more or less, they all tell us about different heart conditions. So just by looking at a ECG, you can tell 1,000 things about the heart. Okay. So this is where I will